Hi, everyone. It's Alec Crawford, your host on the AI Risk Reward podcast. And our special guest today is David Griffiths, the digital creator. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. And I usually start by talking about, people's careers, but you went to a really kind of cool place, Peabody Conservatory and Columbia Union College. And I'm just curious how that shaped your career in music and beyond.
Wow. Well, um, at Peabody Conservatory, I guess I'll talk about them in reverse order. At Peabody Conservatory, I was there for graduate school, and it was wonderful to be in an environment with so many phenomenal musicians. It raised the bar for me. Awadajan Pratt, who became a well-known concert pianist. I won't go through the list of names, but it's a whole bunch of people that were really good. And so it was very inspiring to be there. And I studied jazz piano with Charles Covington while I was there, and vocal performance with several wonderful teachers. Interestingly enough, um, when I went to, um, before I went to audition, I went and had some private lessons with some different teachers to get a perspective on, what I needed to work on to do well and get into the school. And so I had a lesson with a teacher from Peabody, and they listened and they were like, yeah, you do that playing and singing thing real cool, but I don't think, Peabody's really the place for you.
And you're like, what?
So I was like, what? Okay. So I worked my butt off to make sure I was in top form, and I was blessed to do really well. Later, in private, the dean said I had the highest audition score that round of auditions. It's not because I'm not the world's most famous singer, but I was inspired. When someone tells you, like, I don't really think that's the thing for you, I don't know that you really belong here. It kind of brings out another side, like, what? Okay.
Yeah, you can go two ways there. Either you go in, you run through the brick wall, or you go, forget it. I guess I'll just be a car mechanic or whatever. Like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, well, that's cool. And tell us a little bit about Columbia Union College. You were studying music there too, I assume, or
I did. So I went to Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan for 2 years. Then I went to Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama for 2 years. And then I came to Columbia Union College, which is now Washington Adventist University. And I was there for 2 years. I finished a theology degree first and then did my music degree.
wow, yeah, pretty busy.
Yeah.
So obviously you were an adjunct professor for a little while, then transitioned to a CEO. What challenges did you face, and how did you overcome those? They're obviously very different roles.
Wow. I think there are certain things that transfer just because of being in leadership roles. When I was in high school, um, I went to Tacoma Academy in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and my mentor, one of the mentors that I've gained a lot from in life, Bruce Freeman, he was an English teacher there. And so he started this youth group, like a youth ministry group where we were using the arts and sharing our gifts with the community. And he taught me a lot of principles that I use to this day when I'm doing community choir concerts or in different contexts. Even I have a group coaching program and I use it in these different contexts because I realize if you can create a way for people to connect when you're in charge of that group, then people will have so much more of a powerful emotional connection to what you're doing. And so for me, that I took um, that I learned from him and that I was using as a teacher. And so I realized, okay, I need to figure out how to get my team to be connected to the vision and to be connected to one another. And so one of the things that I think is important is actually doing icebreaker kind of activities on a regular to get people to connect with one another so they actually care about the whole a little bit more than just, you know, the outputs.
Yeah. What's your favorite icebreaker game or question or whatever?
Well, it's, I'll say a practice. What I like doing is getting people to pair. Let's say that if we had 16 people here, or 16 and I'm plus one, then I'd get people to pair. And for example, tell them, I want you to tell your partner a time when you felt like you really belonged. So
Nice.
we in pairs, we tell the story. And then I'd say, all right, okay, so everyone find another pair and then share what your partner shared with that other pair. Kind of set it up like that. And then we would have like an idea for discussion. And then someone from each group of four would report back to the whole.
Yeah,
So,
that sounds great. That sounds great. Well, that's a great icebreaker. Love it, especially with groups, pairing up and then groups, small groups. I think that's extremely effective.
it
Great
really,
advice.
it really, so I really enjoy doing community choir concerts. I've been blessed to, there's a community choir called Carpe Diem that I directed at the Kennedy Center,
Hmm.
Millennium Stage.
Hmm.
Um, and then I've done some at different churches that I've been associated with.
Hmm.
And I have many peers who are phenomenal conductors and they're able to get an amazing sound. And I seek to do that too. But what I focus most on when I'm in that context is creating that community experience. And I've heard it many times from people where they'll say, David, when you do these kinds of events, we always feel like a deeper emotional connection because you seem to be focusing in on something different than just the sound of the music. And I believe the music sounds different when we're more invested emotionally, even in the whole group.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. Awesome. Hey, you mentioned a book earlier that sounded super interesting, and it was 10x is easier than 2x by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. So pitch the book to our audience.
Okay. So it's part of a trilogy that Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan did together. And the the amazing concept from it is the idea that you need to find impossible goals or 10x goals versus 2x goals. And in so doing, it will give you clarity. So um, I didn't say this book, but the one thing, I believe it's Gary Keller who wrote that, that has affected my life a lot because when I grew on social media, I just laser beam focused on one platform and just did my one thing until I mastered it. And then I applied it on other platforms and I was able to grow. Well, in this 10X is easier than 2X, um, the idea is if you have a goal that's really phenomenal, and Dr. Hardy uses the idea of this. His son was playing tennis and they were looking for coaches. But the question is, are you wanting to just get into a college program on scholarship or are you trying to become a professional tennis player? Because if you're just trying to get into college, there are hundreds maybe of people who could help you. But if you're trying to become a professional, there's only a handful of people. So when you have a 10x goal, there's a smaller number of possibilities of how you can achieve it. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you have to say no to. And so it, by nature of the very goal itself, in the process, you end up getting that focus that people talk about. One avatar, one platform, one client, that focus of okay, I'm going to do this very narrow path because there's really only a few ways that I could actually get to that really higher level goal. So I really love, like, I never thought of it that way. I really love that concept, and it's helped me to get clearer on what I want to accomplish.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm going to add that one to my list of books to read, which is very, very long right now, because every guest comes on and has an amazing book. Like, oh, I've got to read that one too. So I've got to start reading a book a week apparently. So moving on as the CEO of Content Creating Academy, what strategies have you found most effective and engaging with your audience of social media? So obviously you said start with one spot and do it right. Like, what is that? What did you do? How did that
Okay.
work?
All right. So let me tell you the secret sauce from, let's say, 3 years ago, and then let me apply it today. All right. So and how I got started was at the beginning of the pandemic. One of my high school buddies, who's a public speaker, Jeff Vargas, Generationology, he started a Zoom called Dudes Chat, where us high school buddies could just get together and we couldn't go anywhere. So we might as well meet and shoot the breeze on Zoom. And one of our friends, Kevin, his mom had just died, and he asked me if I'd sing a hymn every morning to help him get through this loss. I said yes. He said if I would do it on Facebook. And I soon realized that Kevin was enjoying it and it was healing and soothing for him, but new people didn't discover me. I'd have to pay in order for new people to discover me on Facebook through ads. And so I started doing some research because I wanted other people to benefit from what was going on. And I learned from Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, that the best place at that time for organic growth on social media was TikTok. But he said it's the best place for businesses for organic growth. And I said, I thought that's for dancing girls. I mean, is that really for business? And he was right. So I got a coach and I laser beam focused. And my coach said something. My coach said, pick 8 or 9 topics that you're passionate about, create content, in the different modalities associated, and then let your audience teach you what they want from you. So, I sang, but people really weren't that excited about me singing. I got like 100 views for like the first video I posted singing. And my first video that went viral, I took my phone. I like props. I took my phone and I was at Chick-fil-A. And so I recorded the long line of cars in front of me. And then I turned around and I said, what's so special about Chick-fil-A anyway? And that was maybe 7 or 8 seconds. But for me, it went viral for me, which was like 17,000 views in the first little bit. And so I learned, one, it's easier to go viral with a shorter piece of content because the algorithm's paying attention to how long people watch your video. So it's harder for me to convince you to watch a 60-second video than a 7-second video. And so if you can get, and it's a good habit, regardless of the kind of content that you're creating, think about watch time because the algorithm sure does. And if it sees that people are watching 75% of your content or the majority of your content, it will send it out to a lot more people. And so it's easier to go viral with a shorter piece of content and something that's really relatable. And then as I kept experimenting, what I was doing for my friend, he asked me to sing a hymn in the morning. I would sing a hymn. I would share an inspiring thought. I'd pray. Well, when I went over to TikTok, I broke those up into separate videos because, TikTok is not like Facebook in that sense. And so when I prayed, like I got all kinds of engagement. And I thought, well, this is weird. Like I wouldn't think that people needed someone to pray with. It just made sense to me in the context of, okay, I'm going to share a hymn, I'm going to share scripture, share a thought, and pray. And then I started getting DMs asking me to pray about situations, asking me for advice. Wow. So there was this great void. And people would say things like, since my husband died, I haven't had anyone to pray with me. I would just hear so many stories, testimonies of what it meant to have someone actually connect with them in this way. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll pray on a daily basis. So that's one of the pieces of content I did. My first million piece of content to have like over 1 million views was when I sat down and I pretended like I was talking to me, but let's say me a little bit a while ago. And I made a video called Don't Quit. And I just shared why you shouldn't quit, even if you're discouraged. And it resonated and it got a whole bunch of views. And so I started thinking, wow, I don't know if I told you this before, but I was on YouTube for 13 years and only had like 100 followers. But in this season now, I realized I was creating content for me and not for someone else. So now I get it. Oh, okay. So let me think about the person that I want to bring healing to, or solve their problem or give value to, and let me create content that resonates with them. And that's what I've found to be successful.
Wow. Well, totally makes sense. It's the same with when you're selling a consumer product. It's not all the whiz bang stuff you're doing with it. It's like, what problem are you solving for your customer, right? I've got dry
Mm-hmm.
skin or whatever, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So with your vast experience in vocal training, songwriting, music in general, how do you incorporate AI into these creative processes, if at all, at this point?
Well, let me. I'm gonna give you a story from yesterday as a minister of music with AI. So it's it's important at the beginning of, maybe at the beginning of a year or beginning of a quarter, to cast a vision so that people have something to be inspired to work towards. And so I used I used AI to help me. What I do now, my process, and I just finished writing the first draft of an ebook called Faith in Motion. And so because of that, I currently have the paid version of Claude and the paid version of Chat, and I've been working through Perplexity, Gemini, and Claude and Chat, helping me refine my book. And that's the thing, right? But what I do now is I treat them like different players on my team, and when I ask the same question, they'll give different answers. And so, like when I asked them, how's this ebook, I got different reflections, and I fixed the stuff that resonated with me on all four platforms. Then after that process, then I started getting people to say, I'd say, hey, can you read this and give me your feedback? And started making corrections there. Then I reached out to my online community. Now I have 11 beta readers who are reading. So I'm using AI in that process, right? But then when it comes to the Minister of Music position and figuring things out there, what I did was I came up with a plan of all the different things that we could do in the next 12 months. And then I I created a proposal, and then I went to Notebook LM and I uploaded a PDF, and then I used that little beta feature where it creates a podcast. And literally, so I sent out an email, and my pitch was the document, but I said, listen to this podcast. And so the pastor and the other people in the team, like the first person, they were blown away, like, oh my god, like how did they know all that stuff? And so it really worked really well. Like I troubleshot it by I did it like 3 or 4 times. By the fourth time, I thought, okay, let me put the names of different choir members. Let me put the names and bios of the different people who are going to participate. So that way, everybody who listens to it will be like, oh wow, it's about me, right? So
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. Look, there's obviously a lot of, ethical considerations as well, right? So thinking about, ethics and the role of AI in the future of music creation and performance, like what are your thoughts there?
um, hmm. so I've written. I guess my bio says I've written over 300 songs. My son has to badger me to get me to write songs nowadays. Um, the long reason of that is probably I get dopamine hits from doing other things that don't take as long as songwriting. And when I see what AI creates, it kind of just takes the wind out of my sails,
Yeah.
you know? And so I hope so. Okay, when I was younger and I wanted to really connect with a young lady, I'd write a song. I think that will still be in place. And if you write one versus have AI do it for you, I think it'll go better because it'll really be from your art, right? But you know, we have to roll with the punches. Even the thing that I was just telling you about, like the creativity of what you can do now and how quickly you can do it. I think that the most creative person and the person who's the fast actor who masters how to do that, they're going to be the ones who are winning in the season of AI.
Yeah, it's the people who learn how to use AI that are going to do great. You know, AI is not going to take your job, but the guy who knows how to use AI is going to take your job. Yeah, that's I agree with that. That's probably the next 5 or 10 years, right? We're going to see that play out. Um, and how do you foresee AI impacting the way we connect and communicate on social media platforms? Right, you've been doing a lot of stuff yourself, but obviously you mentioned Notebook LM, right? That's basically AI creating your podcast. What else is going to happen, or what else are you thinking about?
Well, I mean, okay, so and let me say this because I don't know at what stage your audience is at. Okay, so Fathom takes notes for me whenever I go on a Zoom. So when I have a team meeting, or if I coach someone, or if I'm having, my group coaching class, Fathom takes notes. So there's a video of it, and there's a summary of it, and there's the key takeaways. So AI is already doing that. If I want to, I can take that video and put it in Opus Clips or something like um, video, video.ai, I think is one of the other ones. And of course, it'll chop it up. Or if I use Riverside will, create some reels for me. I have a team of VAs that I've been using and have been supporting my clients. But at a certain point, like I'm shifting what I ask them to do. I'm not having them do everything because if AI can get us quickly in the ballpark, then we'll save you for the fancier things. You know what I mean? So I see the shift being, I mean, it's already, today I wanted to market, today I wanted to market a particular offer. And so I just went to AI and asked it to tell me what would be a good idea. And I give the added instruction of what are the pain points of my avatar? What are their problems? Please make the content that you're suggesting align with their pain points and problems. And so it does a good job of that. I think the next level is probably going to be instead of I create it, now I'm going to take that and put it in a different AI and it's going to create it.
Yeah, no, it's just going to get better and better for sure. Absolutely. And let's talk more about the downside of AI or the risks. You know, obviously you've got the, way out there AGI or the Terminator movies and things like that. But obviously there are more near term, risks. One obvious one I can think of is simply privacy risk, right? Where you wake up one day and like all your details are, you can literally ask Chat GPT and it'll tell, oh, I can find everything out about David Griffiths, like,
Yeah.
and look, they're obviously trying to put protections in. But everybody's heard of the dark web, and there are versions out there of large language models which don't have those same constraints. So what are your thoughts in terms of downsides for the next couple of years? What do we need to watch out for?
When AI first came out, I listened to, is it Mo Gadal? I listened to like, 10 experts and some of them with, doomsday scenarios, right? I listened, and some people don't use AI because of their concern for the negative downside. And quite honestly, because of competition, I mean, who's going to stop now, right? Countries are going to be competing, companies are going to be competing because everybody wants it to be an ethical field, but everybody wants to be the person who figures out, how to do the the next more potent thing first. So I think it'll be more like the atomic bomb. I think, quite honestly, I think it will take something bad happening to inspire people to slow down and actually fix stuff,
Yeah.
to be
So it
honest.
sounds kind of like nuclear energy versus the atomic bomb, right? Like, oh, we can harness this for good and it's going to be amazing, or really, really bad things can happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In terms of learning about AI, and obviously you've named a lot of cool programs. Like, where do you find this out? Like, what are your sources? Do you have any favorite reads or podcasts or anything else?
Mm. So I will let me give you a trail because the trail involves AI. So check this out. So Seth Godin, I admire him. He's a wonderful, phenomenal mind on marketing. So I'm listening to, he had a book come out about strategy. I'm listening to his interviews. And he talks about the fact that he feels Chat GPT is arrogant and he uses perplexity. Okay. So I go try perplexity. Okay. So now I have another one to try out. Um, I'm in team meeting with my partners, Simone and Danny, and Simone's talking about the great things that Gemini is doing. Oh, okay. And then she tells me about Notebook LM. Oh, okay, cool. So then I go take my, go-to tool at the time, which is the paid version of Chat GPT, and I ask about, the pros and cons about different AI. And then I'm watching a YouTube video and someone talks about the fact that, oh, Claude is their favorite. So so then I do my research with the AI. I watch the YouTube videos. I get suggestions from real life people. And then I query the actual AI that I have about other options. So, it feeds on itself.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's pretty cool. Well, listen, as a founder, I'm curious. Do you have any advice for founders? I mean, obviously, a great book you recommended earlier, and all the many things we've talked about could be useful to founders. But what other advice do you have for founders? So going back to your, hey, if I could talk to myself, 5 or 10 years ago, like what would I say? Like, what would you tell like a new founder?
I guess the two things that I would say would be to to make sure that you make it your primary focus to stay aligned with the needs of the person you want to serve, and to literally be fanatical about making sure that the content you're creating, your vision, is aligned with the pain, is aligned with the problems that you have your unique proposition on how to solve, as opposed to being tempted to do other things which are cool. Like, follow, how many likes and followers and comments can I get? Those are great, those are valuable. I teach people about the value of them. But if I could visit me 5 years ago, I'd say, hey, Dave, take 10% of the time that you're going to be great, you're going to have all these followers. Take 10% of the time and put more energy into developing different lead magnets and developing your email list and prioritizing your business and leads and clients versus just, you know, the joy of content creation, because at some point you can get distracted with going viral, right? You
Yeah.
can get distracted with, oh, wow. I mean, I prayed for 20 million followers. I only have 1.5. What else can I do? I mean, like, you can just keep going that way. And then, oh, that's right. But why am I here? And that's the other thing is I think that it's worth our while to get clarity. There's Now I hear it's not truly the way the Japanese officially do it, but there's a concept called ikigai, from the Japanese reason for being, where in order to figure out what is like your purpose, you take the intersection of what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, what the world needs, and what the world is willing to pay for. And in the intersection of those four things, that bullseye is like the thing you're supposed to do, your ikigai. And I think for founders, it's important to do that same process and remember what that is, and try to not get distracted by some of the shiny objects that can distract us from really what is our our real purpose. Why are we here? Why are we doing these things?
Yeah, that makes sense. Look, my last question before we head into our lightning round of underrated or overrated is: look, you spent time in Korea, and I think many of us have traveled outside the United States or wherever you happen to live, but few people have lived outside the United States. So, tell us a little bit about that experience and why you recommend it or don't recommend it for people, and what you feel you really what your big takeaway or takeaways were from that experience.
Um, oh, it was one of the most exciting experiences of my life. And at the same time, it also made me sad. Um, so when I arrived at the school that I was teaching at, the first school that I went to, it had 17 teachers there, and so Jimmy was one of the guys that I met, um, who was also a teacher. He's actually Korean that grew up here in America, and so our first week at the school, he's meeting with his relatives, and he comes to me. He's like, "Dave, my aunt said the strangest thing. She said, 'Are all black people criminals?'" I, like literally, I was like, "Oh, she's joking, right?" And he was like, "No, like all the movies that we see, everybody's like gangster," and so she's like thinking like, so she would be concerned if she saw me as the teacher there, because she just associates that with what they've been exposed to. So I realized like the propaganda side of the exporting of our movies in American culture. Um, I felt a burden to make sure that I brought a different perspective and illuminated people to the beauty and the diversity, not only of Black people, but of other cultures. And so, as a teacher and living abroad, I realized like I could really affect the perception of maybe thousands of people just by me being there versus what they were getting that was being marketed to them. That's that sticks with me. That's something that I didn't realize before I lived over there.
Yeah, that's pretty profound. Well, let's move on to our lightning round. So I'm going to ask you about different things, and then say, "Hey, is that Dave? Is that underrated or overrated?" So we're going to kick it off with Beltsville, Maryland. Underrated or overrated?
Underrated. It's a great place. I love the parks with that, and I feel safe when I'll go walking at 3 in the morning, and I feel
Yeah,
safe. So it's a good
yeah, and
place.
it's obviously near College Park, so that's pretty cool. How about is there any good Korean barbecue anywhere near you? And if there is it underrated or overrated?
Honey Pig is the most popular place that I hear talked about, and I take my son there from time to time. Um, it's not it's underrated.
Yeah.
It really is
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm a fan, especially if you've got karaoke available. Uh, AI powered music composition, underrated or overrated?
Overrated.
Uh, Attending the Peabody Conservatory of Johns Hopkins, underrated or overrated?
Wow, I have to be careful how I answer that. Um, um, hmm,
You could say fairly rated too.
fairly rated. There we
Fairly
go.
rated.
Thank you for that answer.
The Washington Commanders' chances next year, underrated or overrated?
Um, Overrated.
Okay. It's all about the quarterback.
Yes.
Virtual choirs. Using AI technology, underrated or overrated?
Interesting. Underrated. Underrated.
Songwriting workshops, underrated or overrated? In person, of course, in person.
In person. Underrated. Underrated.
The TV show Matlock, underrated or overrated?
Underrated. It's legendary.
Yeah. And in person Italian cooking classes, underrated or overrated?
Underrated.
And finally, the movie Sister Act 2, underrated or overrated?
Underrated.
Awesome. Well, everyone, this has been David Griffiths. He is the digital content creator and CEO of Content Creating Academy. David, thank you for coming on the show.
It was so much fun. Thank you very
Great
much,
to
Mike.
have you. Great to have you. Thank you.